everybody. This is Carol Maletta. Welcome to the Parenting 411 podcast, where we share information parents need from sources they can trust. Welcome to our podcast episode on the disparities in Black maternal mental health outcomes in the United States. According to recent studies, Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications than their white counterparts. This alarming disparity persists across all socioeconomic levels, education levels, and geographic regions, and it has been called a public health crisis. In this episode, we will be speaking with licensed clinicians who specialize in maternal mental health for Black women. We will be discussing the challenges faced by Black women during pregnancy, delivery, and postpartum, the mental health implications of those challenges, and steps that can be taken to address this critical issue. We hope that this conversation will help raise awareness about the disparities in Black maternal health outcomes and promote the development of solutions to improve the health and well-being of Black mothers and their children. Joining me today are Tiffany Bishop and Whitney Coble, founders of Raising Resilience, a mental wellness business. They are committed to educating the Black community and providing mental health services to women and families transitioning into parenthood. Tiffany specializes in Black maternal mental health and is certified in trauma-focused CBT and perinatal mental health. Whitney specializes in coping with daily challenges and is certified in perinatal mental health, birth trauma, cognitive behavioral therapy, and perinatal EMDR. Both founders are passionate about Black maternal health and reproductive education. So welcome, Whitney and Tiffany.
Hey, thank you for having us.
Yes, this is an important topic, and who better to really enlighten us on it. So in light of, increasing reports of disparate maternal health outcomes for Black mothers, could you tell us about your experience working with Black women who are pregnant, giving birth, or in the postpartum period?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we see women in our mental health practice, those who are trying to conceive, those who are already pregnant, or who have already had their children and they're in the postpartum period, which we like to call the 4th trimester. And so usually some of these women come to see us because they just have like fears associated with birth or being a parent. And they want us to, help them with different coping skills, navigating education around what this time will be like for them, right? Like we feel like it is best to prepare before you get into these situations because we don't want you to be in a difficult situation and now you're trying to like scoundrel up all of the coping skills to help you navigate through this. So we see families and women who are, come to us just out of fear. And we also see women who maybe have already had their babies and they've had like a traumatic experience, right? And we like to tell them that your trauma, only you get to define that. So your trauma can be as simple as you didn't get to have who you wanted in your hospital room with you, or you didn't get to have the home birth you wanted because, you had some complications that you need to go to the hospital for. Whatever it is, if it did not go the way that you planned, then we would consider that birth trauma. And so we get women who we need to help them process that trauma. We need to hold a space for that trauma to let them know that this doesn't have to dictate their postpartum experience or who they are as a parent. And we help nurture and guide them through that. Then we have our families or women who are just struggling in that newborn phase, right? They aren't getting any sleep. They are eating, they're having issues breastfeeding, nursing, just managing their emotions, managing if they have other kids, trying to balance and like juggle all of their roles and responsibilities, and just like the parenting difficulties that come with being a mom. And as your kids get older, right, like some things you might be getting more sleep, but now they're into stuff they don't have no business being into. And so we just meet women where they are at whatever stage they are in this, from preconception to our kids are here now and we're parenting.
Well, Whitney, I wanted to add to that something that I thought was going to come up, and that was I wonder how often mothers come to you with concerns and worries about raising Black children in this country right now. Could you
Um,
answer that?
Yeah, I think that's especially important. We just left from, well, this week is Maternal Mental Health Week, but just a few weeks prior, we were a part of a group where for Black Maternal Health Week. And it was a group where we partnered with another organization called She Matters. And we talked about Black mothers and some of the fears they have around raising Black children. And we had mothers on there that had infant kids all the way up to we had a mom on there who was a professor who talked about like her challenges of like, I'm guiding children in the educational system, but I have a Black son that's in college. And she talked about that feeling of not being a helicopter mom, but like having to teach her son, hey, when you and your friends get stopped by the police, these are the things. And she was like, yeah, I'm not a new mom, but this is a new stage of parenting for me where I'm having to learn how to like not make him fearful of things and let him live his life. But she talked about, she was like, Whitney, it's just hard mentally. I'm always thinking about how he conducts himself, how he speaks, how he's able to be free as a Black man. But she was like, she was like, I didn't feel this intensity when he started school or when he was a toddler, whether he choked on something. She was like, I felt like I could manage to make sure he didn't put a toy or Lego in his mouth. But she was like, this stage of him being a 19-year-old Black male and me trying to like not make him fearful and not impound my own fear and trauma on him, but also tell him like everybody doesn't view you with the same innocence that I do. And everyone doesn't look at you. And she was like, that's hard to feel both of like, I want my son to be free, but also that when we talked about how do you hold both as a Black mom, how do you hold the sense of like, I want my child to be who they are, but like this sense of like, I know everybody else in the world is not going to view them or hold the same innocence and the same patience and grace with them. And she was like, Whitney, I have to remind myself, this is a new part of motherhood I've never felt before. Like, I don't have a sense of control. And we had the whole space for that is a part of life, being a mom, that you don't have that sense of like, I got it. And she talked about, and then we had a mom that had an infant son, and she was like, that's crazy. I'm worrying about that. And my son is 2 months. And these moms related in the same way of like, we feel the same things, but our children are so far apart in age.
Yeah, and too, even that made me think about, conversations that I have with my clients, and even my own experience. I have a 5-year-old daughter, and her school is predominantly white. And so we have to have conversations about like her hair and why her hair doesn't look like the other girls in her class. And being able to like stand up for herself, but also feeling like this timid sense of like, but what if they think I'm mean, or what if they think I'm mad or angry? And it's just like that is a stressor that comes with being a Black parent, that you know, people that are not Black, they don't really have that type of stress on them. And that really impacts your mental health, right? Because that increases anxiety, that increases our stress levels, and it impacts the way that we parent, because we can't just focus on parenting our kids for who they are, what's happening around. Like, we have to do it about what's happening around us. And we have to put so much into things that are really not within our control, right? Like, we cannot control what other people do when you step outside of this door. And it's just an extra level of stress and tension and, anxiety that's placed upon us as Black parents.
And I wonder, I don't know how many people feel this way, but I know that after 2020, my sons had just gotten into college. They were about halfway through, and I started worrying about them, a lot more than I ever anticipated. I just thought they would, like, I don't even remember, my brother's about 5 years older than me. I don't remember my mother having to worry about him in quite the same way when he went out and drove across town to see his girlfriend and all of that. I mean, she worried about normal things like the car breaking down or whatever. But I don't even think, I mean, even though we're Black, we live, they certainly, my brother certainly could be subject to running into a white police officer that could be prejudiced or something like that. It wasn't being naive, but the tension just wasn't as bad. But like now, it's like I almost feel like I want to protect them again, like they're, four, and I'm trying to keep them from running out into the street or something. I mean, it's, I think 2020 for sure. The Trayvon Martin case also even opened their eyes, because prior to that, because like you, we live in a predominantly white area, their schools predominantly white, and they just didn't get it. They're like, look at all my friends, international friends, and
diverse.
what are you talking about? Because I'd say things like if they were going to the mall or someplace without me, and they're with someone else's parents or whatever, no running around, don't run around in that mall, don't do this, don't be loud, don't laugh, don't laugh too loud, don't do all this stuff. And they didn't get it. They were like, Mom, please, lighten up. And then, when Trayvon Martin happened, and I think they were, I don't know, 12 or something like that, they're like, oh, okay. And then steadily we've just been seeing, more incidents. And that's kind of like, wow, we're taking a step back in terms of the freedoms that we can expect our children to enjoy. We've worked so hard to put them in places and spaces where they can take advantage of, educational opportunities, enrichment opportunities. But now we have this thing to worry about that really we haven't progressed as far as we thought on.
Right. And I feel like our children, being Black, their innocence is like they're robbed of their innocence a lot earlier than like our counterparts, because we have to worry about these things. And I feel like a part of that, we maybe had this illusion that things were getting better, we progressing forward, but social media has the tendency to like reel that all back in, right? Like, nope, actually over here in Missouri, this is what's happening, this is what happened in Minnesota, this is what's happening in Kansas, right? Like, it makes our world so much smaller. And I talk to my clients a lot too about being careful about what you consume, because tragedy happens, right? Unfortunately, tragedy happens. But what social media does is it puts us in our face as a constant reminder of like tragedy happens. And then it puts us in a state of hypervigilance of like, oh my God, these things really happen. It can happen to me. Is it going to happen to me? And now we're spiraling.
Yes. And so, we've kind of talked about the challenges that Black moms face when raising their older children. What are they talking about in terms of when they're in they're pregnant, anticipating their birth, in terms of their health care and all of that? I mean, I was blessed with good health care. Doctors that really took me seriously, took my calls, had me come in for, extra appointments if need be, what have you. But I'm hearing that that's not the case for a lot of moms. What are you hearing? We'll be right back after this. You love your kids. You do your very best for them. But sometimes it feels like it's just not enough. And you're so sure you're the only one who feels this way. The truth is, you're not alone. It is also true that there are some things you're doing quite right. And there's a community who would love to exchange ideas with you. I'm Carol Maletta, creator of the Parenting 411, a portal for parents where I share information parents need through webinars and masterclasses. And not only that, the parents there support each other on this amazing journey in the Parenting 411 community group on Facebook. I can't wait to meet you in the community. And we're back with the Parenting 411.
I think our biggest thing is like medical bias. So a lot of times, your zip code base is based upon the healthcare that you get. So one of the things with the moms we serve is like there's amazing apps like the Earth app and Health in Her Hue, where Black moms can like literally download this app and look through a directory of providers that provide safe care that is anti-traumatic. Because a lot of women, especially Black women, receive care where they feel unheard. Even if you look at the documentary Aftershock, those Black women in that documentary, no one noticed that there was impending factors that caused them their lives. So like when we look at medical things like blood levels, preeclampsia, all of those things get overlooked sometimes when it comes to Black mothers because there's no one checking behind. I got to get this mom in and out. Oh, she said she was in pain, but migraines are just normal. You'll be okay. And then the next thing you know, this mom is coming into the ER postpartum, and the next thing you know, she's dead because no one noticed throughout her pregnancy that something just didn't look right. And one of the things me and Tiffany, it frustrates us is that we are so tired of Black moms having to advocate during their pregnancy. At some point, when will providers be able to say, you know what, hey, I do need to go back and look at that mom's blood levels, or I need to go back and look at, she said she had a miscarriage a year ago, or she said she had a traumatic birth experience before. Let me be more kind with how I treat her. Let me look and see if she needs a specialist. It's hard trying to advocate to say, I just want quality care when you're 9 months pregnant and your partner is like, hey, I just want my partner to live. Like we have so many moms that go into their birthing experience saying, and I'll ask them, what do you want for your birth? And they'll say, Whitney, I just don't want to die. And I'm like, oh my God, like,
Wow.
what about the quality of care? What about like, your health? And they're like, Whitney, the most I can say is I just don't want to pass away. And I think sometimes it's guided to think that Black women, you have to be poor or uneducated. There was a pediatrician literally that passed away during her birthing experience. So we are guided by this just by the color of our skin, not even by where you work or where you live. It's literally because you're a Black mother. Even mothers that are doctors. We went to an event a month ago, and a woman talked about herself being a doctor and what that looked like for her when she had to advocate for herself, just to say, hey, I need better medical attention around here. So, and then me and Tiffany also look at, how does that impact you mentally? Like you're
Yes.
through your pregnancy with your stress levels on 10, which that then goes into your baby. Black babies are born with higher levels of stress. Then we progress. What does that look like in toddlerhood? What does that look like when you begin school, when you are born with such high levels of stress? So it's a lot. The medical bias impacts a lot when it comes to Black motherhood.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, like, quality care needs to be the standard, right? Like it is, don't need to like be able to pick and choose. So, the institutional racism and bias and prejudice that we need talking about is definitely a contributing factor, but also the system in itself is just not set up for like quality and birthing experiences, right? You think about how many patients doctors see, we are 15-minute increments, right? Like, are you really figuring out what's going on with me within these 15-minute increments? You have to have a certain amount of births like lined up. So now we have scheduled C-sections, right? And we know that more C-sections result in more deaths. Some C-sections are necessary, right? They are life-saving. But when we start to like just do this because it's easier for money, because hospitals get paid more for C-sections. And so like when we start doing things and we get away from the quality of care and it's starting to be like a more like efficiency standpoint, okay, like let's keep pushing out these births, then that's when we see like lower level of care. And so that system in itself needs to be changed, in addition to providers needing to like look within and examine their biases. Yeah, and just like trauma-informed care. Or Whitney talked about how the stress levels within our DNA, right? That trauma that's in our DNA that is, passed on, epigenetics. And so if Black people are already coming to you in this state, then doctors already need to have some trauma-informed care, right? Like, how do I address people having this information? Because I'm a medical provider and I know these things. How am I going to show up for my Black patients, right? in order to ensure that they are going to receive quality care and that they're going to make it out of this hospital alive with their baby.
Yeah. And I think when you think about it, 65% of maternal mortality when it comes to Black women are preventable. So Black women are losing their lives when they go in to have their child, and they're passing from preventable reasons.
Something you could have fixed, something you could have done would have saved her life.
And how that feels with Black fathers when they're literally, I have a client, she always lets me share her story. Like, her husband tried to advocate for her when she was having her twins. And the medical team was like, he's being non-compliant, he's being aggressive. And he was like, she's bleeding, she's in pain. And they were like, sir, you need to step to the side. We have this. And she was like, in that moment, I knew I was going to die, because at that moment, my husband is being told us to stay out. And she was like, he's holding my birth plan, literally going over the things my doula told us to say. And they're looking at him saying, oh, he's being aggressive. And he was like, they don't even understand it, because they don't understand why he's upset, because he doesn't want to see his children or his wife die on the table right here because no one listened.
Right, right. And as we wait for reforms in the care, what kinds of tools or strategies do you give moms to help them to advocate for themselves?
Yeah, I mean, we really stress community, right, and education. So let's go into this situation prepared. What do you want your birth experiences to look like? Right? What are the resources and tools and the supports around you that we can incorporate to help you, get your best birthing experience? Whitney talked about the Earth app, right? We need to prepare for these things before we're actually in it. So you get to interview your doctor. You get to choose who you want your doctor to be. And if it's going well, then all of a sudden something takes a turn and you feel like, no, you can fire your doctor because you're paying for it. Your insurance is paying for it. You can call your insurance company if you have a complaint, right? They want to know which doctors are not providing quality care. So going back to the Earth app, right? You can see which doctors are are showing up for us, right? Talking to, again, like community to gain that community support. What will I need after in the postpartum experience? What are some things that, or some resources or things that I can set up to help me have a successful experience after birth? And, again, advocating for yourselves, even though we hate that burden has to fall on us.
And I think also, like, I have several moms that have a doula. And I think having someone that can guide you through, hey, these are the things we're up against, because I think one of the things is having a maternal mental health therapist. Because me and Tiffany, I have clients that haven't even had kids yet, just because that fear of becoming a mom is so detrimental on them, where they're like, Whitney, I have got to get myself together mentally before I even think about conceiving or think about having a child. So I always say, like, who's your like superhero team? Like, who do we need to go in so we can have you fully armored? Like, having a doula, someone that can say, hey, we're not going to this hospital or this practice, or hey, I like this midwife over here. Someone that you can trust is going to guide you in the best medical care, and someone you can say, like, a lot of me and Tiffany's clients, after their medical appointments, they set up their therapy session after or before, or even with their doula, so they can say, hey, these are some of the things I want to go into my appointment and make sure I ask, because you get very nervous going into those appointments and you're like, oh my God, I didn't ask this. I need to ask this. So how can we make you best prepared to ask what's important to you? How did you feel? Did you feel validated during that? And then having a doula that can assist you with these things, medical wise, physically wise, all of those things, throughout your journey, because sometimes you just don't know. And I don't want women to think, I have so many women that come to us and they think they're supposed to have this big invisible book bag of everything they're supposed to know. And I'm like, no, you have supports and resources in place that can guide you and assist you. You don't have to know it all, but have your team ready.
Yeah. And that's what I want to say too, right? Like know that you have options. If at least know that you have options, right?
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
some we have women who choose not to have hospital births, right? Like that's a place where things not going well. That's not the outcome that I'm looking for. So what are my options? Can I have a doula? Can I see a midwife instead of an OB? Right? Like what are the difference between the two?
Mhm.
What does my superhero team need to consist of, right? Because before being in this field or before becoming a mom, right, we never heard of like what a pelvic floor PT was. I'm like, a pelvic floor? And then when you start like gaining all these resources and these tools, and it's like, oh my God, why don't everybody know about this? Like, why
Right.
anyone know about this? This should be standard quality care. This should be
Mhm.
standard quality care of all of the professional supports, tools and resources and community, advocates that we need in order to ensure that we are making it out of these birthing experiences.
Yeah,
Making it
alive. Yes.
because we don't want to, and a lot of the work that I do is trying to bring back joy into Black birthing experiences because we
Yes.
hear statistics, right? Like we know the problems, we know it, we know the
Mhm.
problems, but like let's get to the solutions. How do we? What ways do we create an environment where people are excited to have babies and they want to have babies and they're thinking about like the future and the excitement of all of those things, right? In order to do that, we have to know the solutions and we have to know our options.
Yes, I mean, that's something that I was thinking about when Whitney was speaking earlier about all of the challenges and all the questions and, hey, I just don't want to die and all of that. And that's what I was wondering, what happened to that joyful stage? I mean, when you're pregnant, you know you have this life growing inside of you. You're trying to eat the right things. You're just trying to do everything right. And you're dreaming about what this baby will be like, what your family life is going to be like. But here you have to think about these basics. Like, first of all, am I going to raise my baby? Am I going to be here to raise my baby? Or will we come through it healthy? Because they might come through it, but based on incompetent care, they could have some ongoing problems. So yes, bring the joy back into the experience for Black mothers. I think that's so important, what you're saying about that. And so you did say something earlier I wanted to make clear, because I think a lot of people think that when you have a doula, oh, that automatically means that you're having the baby in an alternative setting, a home or something like that. But it sounds like that maybe some mothers have a doula on their team just to make sure even the hospital birth goes well. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. So doulas aren't doulas don't catch babies. They don't deliver them, right? They are, so there is so much advocacy work rooted in doula work. And so they are giving you the education and the support that you need to get through this. Some doulas massage you during, like they are just like, when you think about support, that like doula is what you should envision. They also provide postpartum care. So that means that they can come to your house after you have the baby. They're cooking meals for you, they're cleaning for you, they're letting you sleep. Doulas really do, they have a wide range of services that they can provide during support. And even with midwives, certified licensed midwives, they do deliver baby, they catch the babies. But that can happen in a home birth, a birth center, or in a, hospital, you can. And so that's what we talk about when we say like, know your options,
And I think it's knowing what state you live in, because some doulas can, well, we're North Carolina, there's laws and stipulations around it, but knowing your state, because you can literally see if your doula can be covered by your medical insurance, and also what services they can provide to you around it as well. And a lot of times we don't know that until we're like pregnant, like, oh, I didn't know I could have that. So it is important to know what's allowed like in your state and how and meet with different doulas. Like there are so many different types of doulas, like fertility ones, postpartum ones, birthing ones. Yes, laws. There's so many different types.
I've come to learn that. I interviewed one earlier, but that was, I wanted to make sure everybody understood that, you don't have to associate a doula with a home birth or some outside of the hospital system. But something else I wanted to ask too was, because you just said something I didn't realize, that midwives could deliver the baby in the hospital. Like how receptive are hospitals and doctors to stepping aside and allowing midwives to deliver in the hospital?
Yeah. Well, so some practices have midwives like in
Okay.
their. Yeah. And so you get to decide. So like with with my son, I had an amazing OBGYN. And so I would go back and forth between my OBGYN and my midwife because I wanted to ensure that if my OBGYN wasn't on call when I gave birth, that I could have any of the midwives that were like on the team. And I mean, we have some great medical providers who are really doing the work, who are really like working hard in order to make sure that women make it out of these, birthing experiences alive. And so with that being said, all midwives aren't built the same, right?
Sure.
So, but again, knowing your options, doing your research, using stuff like the Earth app to see who has evidence of providing safe and sound and culturally competent care can definitely like help us get on the other side.
And I think I think watching the documentary Aftershock, looking at the historical nature of midwives, because midwives were Black women in our communities. Like,
Sure.
even my own mom, like my mom and all her siblings were not birthed in a hospital. Like they were all birthed at home. And so like with like looking at that, like my aunt didn't consider herself a midwife, but she literally helped. Like none of my mom or her siblings, my grandma never went to the hospital. So like midwives started in the Black and African communities, and like that was stolen from us, when white OBGYNs, when they began to say, okay, because OBGYNs are trained to be surgeons, to do C-sections in that sense. Like that's what they're trained to do. So when you look at what a midwife provides, what an OBGYN provides, it's good to have a practice what Tiffany went to, because you have someone that really knows the study of pregnancy and birth on top of someone that knows, okay, if medical complications come arise, this is how I can help you. But the historical challenges of midwifery and how it turned into a more kind of, you need to go to school for this. You need to it really took away the community sense of it. So learning that helped me to learn how it started with us, but it changed over the years and how it changed. So I think it's definitely important to have a midwife to assist you, or looking at practices that have both, because it's value in having anything you need going through that experience.
This is interesting. This is also interesting to me because you have to realize I have twin sons, but they're 23. And so we didn't hear much about practices that had midwives as part of it. I mean, I think I didn't learn about a doula until I was pregnant. And, I mean, it might have just delivered the kids when I even heard the word. And so, and that wasn't part of my doctor's practice, but although they had a very good practice and I had a Black doctor and, felt very well cared for, and they had, other doctors on there who weren't Black, but, I felt like I was in good hands with their staff, but there was no midwife on the staff. I mean, like that maybe they do now. They probably have that now, but like the idea that they were part of the staff, that's just mind blowing to me, but it's great because it's just really more options to help moms feel comfortable during a very vulnerable time in their lives.
Yeah, and we do a lot of work with the doula, and she's training to be a midwife too now. Fametta, who talks a lot about the like history and getting back to our roots, right? Midwifery was the roots of it all. That's how women were giving babies. The practice of OBGYN was kind of like built out of spite, right? Out of spite to kind of like convince people that midwives weren't the way to go, and you need to have your baby in this like hospitals or facility setting or whatever. And to kind of like really back into what Whitney and I do is that we help women like process this information, and we help explore their options and, uncover the toll that is taken on their emotional and mental well-being. And then how do we, improve that, right? And like make you feel confident and hopeful and happy and all of those things about your birth.
And then so postpartum in supporting women who have mental health challenges, what does that look like, and how long on average are moms in your care after they've had their children?
Sure. So what we tell women that, we actually just did a podcast about this. Okay, so postpartum is the period after birth, right? Like postpartum is the time period, it's a period of time where you have, after you give birth, then we are going into the postpartum period. And so what we see as far as like mental health challenges are considered to be perinatal mood and anxiety disorders.
Mhm.
And so a lot of times women are like, oh, I have postpartum, or I have postpartum depression. And then we get into things and we're like, actually, it was postpartum anxiety, but we don't know, right? So that is our job. Our job is to talk about these challenges that fall under that perinatal mood and anxiety disorder, and to give education so that we can start doing some of those stigmas and biases, right? Like a lot of times when people think about like postpartum and they start describing us like she was going to hurt her baby, she's going to do all those things. That's not even what we consider postpartum depression, right? Like that's a more severe disorder that we would point, or the term is postpartum psychosis, right? That's where we see the hallucinations, illusions, the detachment from reality, you know, thoughts of suicide or infanticide. And then, so we kind of take women through the steps of like, what are your symptoms? Here are the symptoms of these diagnoses. Let's figure out where we fall so we can kind of like develop a treatment plan to best support you. And so genuinely, there's really no time period of where we stop seeing women. It's like, oh girl, you 3 months after this baby, it's time to go. You good now, right? Like it depends on the circumstances around your situation. You know, there's also this thing called baby blues where that really doesn't last longer than 2 weeks. And so those symptoms, you know, they can resolve in their own, or if you already have a therapist and you can talk about it, like it's some quick coping skills we could give you to help manage that fatigue, manage that sadness, get you up and moving, that might work, opposed to someone who is like deep into like postpartum OCD, and they really need this like one-on-one structured, tailored treatment to how we get through and find you some relief.
Well, you know, it's good that, you know, you provide care to them for as long as they need. I was just curious, on average, like how long after their children are born do moms tend to still seek you out, like on average? We'll be right back after this. As the saying goes, mother's work is never done, except when it really is. I'm talking about my new book, Mother's Work, Pearls of Wisdom and Gems from My Journey. I share my transformation from an outmanned, overwhelmed mom of twin boys to a parenting strategist and consultant, and being honored as DC Mother of the Year by American Mothers Incorporated. In Mother's Work, I tell you about the 7 guideposts that kept me anchored as I weathered the peaks and valleys of motherhood. Grab your copy at carolmaletta.com/motherswork. And we're back with the Parenting 411.
Well, I think when you think about, because perinatal means that one of the things I've learned is most of my moms are experiencing these symptoms during their pregnancy. They just don't know what it is. So when we say perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, that means we're covering you through pregnancy and your postpartum period, because you can have prenatal depression or perinatal depression that's been showing up in your pregnancy, and you were just like, oh, I'm hormonal, I'm pregnant, I should feel this way. But then it begins to show up and your baby is 6 months. So you can experience a mental health challenge, or PMAD, as we say, perinatal mental health and anxiety disorders, all the way up until 1.5 years after you give birth. So I've had moms that come to me and their child is like 9 months and they're like, Whitney, this anxiety is blowing me through the roof. Like, I don't know how to explain it to my husband, my partner. And so things don't just show up 2 weeks or 1 month after. You can experience postpartum depression and your baby can be 10 months. You can experience postpartum depression and your baby is 11 months. Any of these challenges can come about up until 1.5 years postpartum. So we have to explain that to a lot of moms. So they're just like, oh, I'm not getting the hang of being a mom and my baby's 9 months. No, you can experience this 1.5 years postpartum. And I've had moms that finish in 6 to 10 sessions.
Mhm.
They just needed a space to validate that, okay, Whitney, me waking up to check my baby's little chest every few minutes is normal and valid, but I cannot let that impact me to where I'm not getting sleep, to where now I'm so fatigued throughout the day. Or like, I have a lot of parents with multiples, like I know yourself, you have twins. And so I have a lot of parents where being a parent of multiples is hard. So we have to hold that space. And I have moms that move through quickly, like they're with me, like, you just held space and validated. And now I know, okay, Whitney, I need to get up and take a walk every day. I need to eat. I need to pump. So I have moms that move through 6 to 10 sessions, and I have moms where I've seen their kids grow up and their kids are like walking and talking and have teeth. And I'm like, oh God, where the baby knows to come to the screen, like, oh, Miss Whitney is on this. So we have some moms that finish very quickly and just need that space to be held. We have couples that come through are like, we're not getting along. We don't like each other. And this baby is like breaking us apart. And then we have moms that are very long term, to where we transition with them through different phases of motherhood. With now they're a parent of a 2-year-old, and we've seen their babies grow up. So it's just what they need in their treatment of care. So we have some people that move fast, and we have some people that are stuck with us.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And too, something that we've learned is that, you know, if a perinatal mood and anxiety disorder goes untreated, so let's say that you were experiencing this when your baby was 6 months or even in your pregnancy and you didn't get help, you know, you could feel like when your child is 5, you could feel like you're failing, right? And so we talk to you and we get history and we're like, oh no, you weren't failing. You've just been struggling for this long. I think a peak age too is around like 3 years old, where moms feel like at that point, like I should be getting it, right? Like we 3 years in this thing and I'm still struggling. And so we do kind of like a little history check of like what's been going on and shifting our expectations around parents. And that's a lot of our stress comes from our expectations too. And so, you know, at 3 years old, we expect that we should like have a handle on this. They should be old enough that things are like going well, but really it's just a different stage. And with each stage comes a new set of challenges. So yeah, you're probably getting better sleep because you're not waking up every 2 to 3 hours to feed them. But now you're dealing with the culture with stories of like we turning up and we got and you know, things of that nature. And so we really do, you know, most of our clients have like those little babies, but we grow with them. Like we grow through their stages of motherhood to where now we're seeing them being toddlers.
Like I even have a client, she was like, Whitney, without having you all's information, her daughter is like grown with her own daughter now. That she was like, Whitney, like we talk about her birthing experience with her daughter 23 years ago. And she was like, Whitney, I never talked to anybody about it. I didn't know. Like, she was like, I needed a space to talk about that, because she was like, my daughter's about to have a baby. So she was like, things are triggering me. And I don't want it to impact my daughter in her birthing experience, because I did not know. She was like, never heard of a maternal mental health therapist. She was like, me and my husband went home. They gave us a little thing of formula. And she was like, we were good to go. She was like, I wasn't even able to recognize how I was until she was like, when I sat down with my family, and she was like, her sister was like, it was difficult being around you when you had her. She was like, you were very overprotective. She was like, you wouldn't allow us to help. She was like, you always felt like you were on the go. And she was like, Whitney, I just thought that's how moms were. She was like, no one told me that was not the norm. She was like, and now my daughter's 23 and I don't want her to experience that. And I don't want to be triggered by it or not hold space for her. So like Tiffany said, those things show up in different parts of your life, even if you're not a quote unquote new mom or quote unquote postpartum.
Yes, I mean, as I'm hearing you all talk, and I mean, we really should normalize having a maternal mental health professional. I mean, you just should. I mean, you really should, and then have someone to check in with. If I had it to do over, I would. I would. I mean, everything else about my birth experience, you know, I would do it again with the same doctor, all that stuff. Things went well. I really am. I'm grateful for that, but the maternal mental health counselor would have been great. I mean, a little bit leading up to it, because, you know, you've got to deal with, you know, families' expectations and, you know, on both sides of the family. And, you know, in our case, one side of the family, this was their first grandchild. On my side of the family, it's like, hey, welcome to the family. I mean, they're still excited and loving and anticipating them, but this is not our first rodeo. So there's that. And then right after, I definitely could have really used that. And my mother, whose background was in psychiatry, she was kind of, she was very helpful, a listening ear, and also very much a hands-on helper. And I think sometimes she didn't say it a lot. I mean, I think she may have said it once, that she was concerned about, my state of mind in the midst of all this. Plus they were twins and all, but, somehow with the help that I got and, I don't know, the way I just approach life, I'm a very logical, organized kind of person. Once those things kind of came back together, after baby brain subsided a little bit and I got that together, I made it. However, I probably could have come through a lot faster and a lot stronger if I had a maternal mental health counselor. I definitely advocate for that. So I'm going to be talking to people about that. You should get one. They should be praying. And if they're in North Carolina, I'm going to tell them about you all. But so as we close, if you could think about, and we've talked a little bit about how policies need to change and all of that, but what's like at the top of your list that you would just love to see, healthcare workers, healthcare providers, policymakers, and just the community to do to help improve maternal health outcomes for Black women, and also, provide comfort and ease their challenges mentally and emotionally during that very important time.
Let's talk about how they need to put their money where their mouth at.
I agree. I think we have to be honest that the systems that we have in place for mothers are very antiquated. So I think first on a policy and system level, there are so many things in our healthcare system that doesn't serve everyone equally. So when we think about equity in Black maternal mental health, we got to start from the top. And there's not a lot of funding put into Black birth because there's more funding put into I hate to be honest, but our death. So I just think first, not providing traumatic care and funding is just the money is the biggest thing. We're not going to get much change until the money and the priority is there. I guess if we'll see.
Yeah. Like, hospital, just like they get incentives for the C-sections and stuff, they need to start getting incentives for making these women leaving, right? Living through these birthing experiences, because you put the money behind that for sure. They're gonna do everything they got. They're gonna check the box. They're gonna check the platelet levels. They're gonna check, blood pressure. They're gonna do all the things because they're being incentivized, and it shouldn't be that way, right? But we still need funding in just equity and quality care. What really Sakina would say that we just need to break the system all down, right? We need to break it down. We need to tear it down to the ground and start back over. But I really do think funding is important because money makes the world go round.
And I think one thing is to not continue to burn our Black health workers out. When we think about Black maternal health and Black maternal mental health, that weight is often put on our shoulders. Like when you look at Black, we're always like, where are the Black doctors? Where are the Black nurses? Where are the Black, but let's not burn our Black providers out in order to provide adequate care. Providers that aren't just Black need to be aware of what our biases are. Being a white woman or a white man, you may not know what those biases are. You may have never came across that, but it doesn't mean that you don't have to know. When we do cultural competence trainings in hospitals and corporate offices and all of these places that's making change, we need to make that more tailorized to each person, because Black providers are sitting in these same cultural competent trainings we know this, we know the challenges we face. We know the biases. So I think also one of the biggest things is don't burn our Black health workers, Black maternal health workers out at the expense of like making care quality, because that care has to be quality across all boards, and equity does not look the same. You're going to have to work a little bit more for certain cultures and groups than you are others. And making there should be some, and me and Tiffany are working on this, but like a certification to where we know certain hospitals and birthing centers are safe for Black mothers. Like it shouldn't be this kind of like pick and game or gamut of, oh, well, this is just what I know. But I just think the biggest thing is like when policies are put in place. I know the Mambas Act that's in place through Kamala Harris and Biden. The thing is, I just don't want Black health workers to get burnt out in the fight to make things equitable for everyone. So I just think that's the biggest thing, the funding and not burning out our Black providers.
And I think another important part of that too is that like even, some of our Black providers are not providing like quality care because they enter a system that they have to assimilate to. So we also need to get these like as they are like in medical school, right? Before they even get into medical school, providing these trainings to help, reframe their thought processes and train their thoughts into providing quality care.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because you can't say that, find a Black doctor, go to a Black hospital or whatever and have your baby or whatever. I mean, the numbers aren't there. There aren't enough of them, first of all, to serve our community. And we don't say to other groups, go to the doctors of your race, your culture, and whatever. You all are able to provide to everyone. So, you should be thinking that way in terms of the communities of color in particular, and it should be an essential part of medical school training. So hopefully we will get there. How can we follow your work, whether it's be on your website, social media, and let us know about anything you have coming up that people could take advantage of?
So our website is weareraisingresilience.org. Our Instagram handle is raising.resilience. And I forgot the rest of the questions.
Yes, so our Twitter is raising .res, RES. And so we are accepting new clients in North Carolina and DC. We have a wait list because we have a lot of moms and dads wanting to have services. So we are expanding. We also have a free ebook guide. We're coming out to help Black moms and couples navigate through their birthing, pregnancy and birthing experience when it comes to their mental health. We have a book that's dropping. We have a monthly series we host called Holding Space, where we hold space for Black women to be able to talk about different various topics when it comes to their mental health. Last month, we kicked off an amazing holding space around infertility and fertility challenges for Black women when it comes to IVF and thinking about having another baby and what resources are there. And then we have our YouTube series. So we have a lot of great things going on right now. We even have digital products we're dropping in our affirmation cards, which all of that can be found on our website and through our social media.
Okay, because that's what I was going to say. So they can come to your website. Are they able to sign up for any kind of newsletter or anything?
Yes, they can subscribe right on our website. It's right at the bottom. They can subscribe to our email newsletter list.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you so much for joining me today to talk about this very important topic. And to our listeners, I never take it lightly that you've taken a moment to listen to the Parenting 411 podcast. I hope that you will continue, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends all about it, not only this episode, but the podcast in general. Continue to follow the Parenting 411 on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And head on over to www.carolmaletta.com to learn more about what we're doing. And I also am offering my mini motherhood memoir free at mothersworkthebook.com. That's mothersworkthebook.com. And not only will you get the book, you will also have access to Do You Hear Me? Staying Connected in the Chaos. That is my webinar, along with a companion workbook. And that's if you order at mothersworkthebook.com. And you'll only be paying shipping and handling. Otherwise, the book is free. and continue to follow the Parenting 411. We've got some exciting things coming up. We'll be hosting the Parent and Purpose Summit coming up again. So stay tuned, and remember that it's never too late to be the parent that you want to be. Thank you.